Okay. Fix this mic. I don't know if I put it here. I wonder how well it will do. Actually, yeah, I think that's better. Okay. Cool. All right. Let's see. Let's add in the music. There we go. We got this going. Okay. Awesome. Oh, so this one is doing pretty well. All right. So this one is called Has Anyone Lived in a Haunted House? Now, if you join me over on the YouTube side, you can definitely see what I'm reading. But regardless, either way, it's still good if you're here enjoying some spooky stories with me. Hello. All right. So I'm going to zoom in on here. Has anyone lived in a haunted house? I have this memory of visiting this big old house in Somerset, UK as a child with my family. This is the house my dad lived in as a baby, and my grandfather would go to the pub and leave my poor Nan with the baby in this country house with a shotgun to defend herself. She would sit in the living room and watch the lights swing back and forth without anyone prompting. She would hear sounds from everywhere else in the house as well. She also saw an enormous milk barrel move on its own accord. There was a chapel on the grounds, so there were obviously stories of a ghostly monk. But when we turned up and asked the family who later moved into the house about these ghosts, they had no idea about them. What do you guys think? Hello, thank you for the rose and the likes. Okay, so comment section. So this person is responding and they say, yeah, my father had a real 80s style bachelor plaid. It was on a road in a city near me and one of the Victorian style terraces. Almost every part of the city got bombed in World War II except that one on the street. He gutted the place and completely remodeled it. And that's when things started happening that were really weird. The cellar area, you always felt to watch like a feeling of being stared at. My twin brother would scream nightmares every night as he slept. I was fine. The stereo system would turn itself on at night, and one night it did that. And I went downstairs to turn it off as I approached it, and I thought I went through a really icy cold patch. And as I reached out to turn it off, it went off before I could even touch it. And it would do this all the time. My father woke one night, and he's a real non-believer, by the way. There was a Victorian-looking woman at the window, and she turned slowly to him and just vanished. When we would leave the house sometimes, old coins would be thrown at us. We picked these up wherever we could, and there were silver coins from 100 years ago called the 3 penny coins. Faces could appear in the fireplace of a suit. It wasn't angry and evil as such, but you get the feeling it wanted us out. It was a very weird place, and I often wonder how the new owners found it after he sold it up. That's crazy. First of all, if your father renovates a place, that meant something to spirits. That means that they're going to let you know, hey, like, what did you do to my home? Uh, also, other fun little thing. If you guys join me over on the YouTube side, you can see exactly what I'm reading. So there's that as well. So you kind of want to have a ghost. Have you ever had any paranormal experiences, Ricky? Okay. Okay, so someone says remoter leteps is what they're called. I really need to submit this as a story, but the basics are her name is Marie and she owned my house from 1926 to approximately 1949. Her son also owned it briefly in the 1960s through the census records. I've learned that she and her husband raised 4 children together. There were 2 sons, 2 daughters, and she was employed as a public school teacher here in Chicago, and I have proof of that. I found old school papers from the 1940s stuffed into the window wells for extra insulation. Now, the one interesting thing I noted in looking through these deeds was that Marie bought the house in her name only. Very uncommon in those days. I interpret this to mean that she might have purchased it with money from an inheritance and wanted to make sure it remained her property, not one co owned with her husband. And to my knowledge, they had no marital problems. Marie just had some modern attitudes about this property. Oh, interesting. Like, imagine having like a Victorian ghost in your house and they they just want they don't want to share it with anybody. I mean, hey, I could see that being a thing. Why not? Hello. All right. So this one is pretty long, but it's from Bowen the original. Hauntings often depend on the energy of the living people to manifest. Some people simply don't have the right vibrations to allow hauntings to manifest. Some have access of the right vibration, and we call them mediums. That's an interesting take. Okay, let's keep going. So this one is, ooh, okay, I'm very familiar. I'm actually excited to share this because I'm very familiar with this. Okay, so Imani, the 90s, they write, I live in Capitol Hill in Denver by Cheeseman Park. I've had so many paranormal experiences. It is mind blowing. My sis is a medium. I didn't even believe in ghosts until I started working at the Denver Botanic Gardens. I'm not going to elaborate because the merits its own thread. Highly recommend reading up on both the garden and Cheeseman Park. We're going to get into that actually after the story. One of my apartments near Cheeseman was so haunted that I couldn't keep glass in there because it would keep flying off the shelves. The elderly lady upstairs from me had died a year prior. She was single and nobody found her until a week later. My neighbor used to help her run her trash out and had offered to take her cats after finding out she had passed. The paramedics wouldn't let her because the cats had started to eat her and they needed to euthanize them. I don't think she was the ghost bugging me. I got the vibe it was an angry man. But that is how much spooky energy is circulating around my neighborhood. I lasted a year in the apartment. My parents' house is also haunted as fuck too. They live on a ranch an hour south of Denver. I got hit by a car while riding my bike and had to stay at my parents' house for weeks. When they moved in, they converted the wood shop of the husband of the cattle rancher who lived there into a spare bedroom. I was sleeping in that room, and I was on a ton of painkillers and kept having really intense dreams that an old cowboy was storming at me through the wall and beating me up. He was so angry, it was scary. I was freaked out, so I slept on the couch outside of my parents' room after that. I assumed it was the painkillers. I didn't believe at the time, but I talked to my sister and she told me, oh, I know who that guy is. I see him all the time. He's nice to me because I take care of the horses and he loves horses. We told a lady who lives on the neighboring property and she said, sounds like Clay, Diana's husband. He killed himself on the property and he loved horses, got arthritis so bad that he couldn't ride anymore and he just unalived himself. Clay is still around, staying in the same room recently. I tried to do some yoga and got so scared and uncomfortable that I had to leave, like I was being chased out of the room. Picks fall off the wall and shatter all the time. So yeah, you're probably dealing with a ghost. Trust your gut. It's always right. That is crazy. I actually really, really like enjoy the story only because the first half because I'm really familiar with Cheeseman Park. And the fact that they worked their sister worked at the botanical gardens. So if you don't know about any of this stuff, you guys, so in Denver, if you ever have the opportunity, please go to Cheeseman Park, visit the botanical gardens. So the botanical gardens and Cheeseman Park are right next to each other. So it's literally like the garden, and then next to it is this big park. People are always there. It's like one of their most popular parks in Denver. And basically the story goes is that it used to be a cemetery. Now this rich guy decided to literally build, well, it was like a couple of other people. They build the botanical gardens on top of part of it and decided that they were just going to make a park. Now people try to collect these bodies and try to put them somewhere else, but they weren't always lucky and successful in finding everything in all the parts. So the park, while it's very alive and thriving, and does have some dark stuff on it, and there's still probably remains way underneath that park. It's pretty wild. It's a wild story. Again, if you ever have the opportunity to go out there, check it out. Yeah, so it's really interesting. And also, if you guys are interested, I am on YouTube Live as well. If you guys want to see what I'm reading, feel free to join me on there. If not, either way, I enjoy your guys' company and I enjoy that we're doing scary story time. So, where do you live? Do you live in Colorado, Scotty? I'm gonna upvote that one because it was pretty good. Okay. Okay. Yamani says, "Oh, I think she also adding on? Was this the original?" Okay, yeah. So they asked about the botanical gardens, and she's like, "It's so haunted. I've always felt ghosts, but didn't really believe in them until I started working there. Staff and volunteers quit all the time." They're talking about the botanical gardens. They had a hard time keeping night security guards. Staff had to go to the filing room in twos because they had violent paranormal attacks, and a couple employees and a volunteer had quit. That what? My experience working at an event planning meeting with 5 contracted security guards and 4 other staff members. It was the holidays, and we were sitting in the lobby of the main building. 3 groups of giant ornaments hung down about 3 feet from the ceiling in threes. They weren't close enough to touch, but during the meeting, the center set of ornaments started cackling together for about, cackling like hitting each other for about 30 seconds, and then went dead still. Just the center. There was no wind, no opening of doors, nobody on the roof, nothing. It was concrete building. That's when I believed. There was a ghost who would wander by the office looking for his fiance. My boss saw him. They had a lot of apparitions in my building, but the admin mansion had way more intense stuff. Ringing, phones ringing, balls bouncing, footsteps, and then the attack. It was over the Catholic section, but also a tuberculosis clinic. Every time they would dig a garden, they had to call the cornerer. They found an arm bone in the Japanese garden in 2022. A bunch of caskets and maybe bodies. I thought I saw an article saying it was a mass grave behind the tuberculosis clinic and found 300 bodies, but I'm cross-checking now. When they were building the Rise Gardens in the 90s, they found a little girl in a glass casket. The comb in her hair was dated to the 1920s. Going to drop some links. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that is wild. See, it's like I was telling you guys, like the botanical gardens and Cheeseman Park it was literally a graveyard. And they're like, oh, well, we're just going to build a park and botanical gardens. It's just dark. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Oh, you're so nice. Oh, thank you, Jay. New Jersey will shout out, Scotty. Thank you. I'm also on YouTube, so if you guys want to check out what I'm reading, feel free to join me on there. Just for anyone that just joined, letting you guys know, I have to upvote that too. They found a glass casket. I'm gonna have to look this up. Maybe I should do a story time, like a TikTok on this, of like what they found in 2022. I'm gonna make a note of that. Bear with me while I do that. 2022 glass casket. Botanical Gardens in Denver. Wild. Okay. So, and Denver has like a lot of crazy stuff. Okay, so I think this is someone asked, can I ask how your house is haunted by your grandparents? So Menya said, the house is part of a housing estate that was built after World War II. My grandparents moved in when the house and the street was built in 1953. They watched the rest of the estate get completed around them. There was nothing there but woodland before that. My dad married my mom and they lived with my grandparents. Anyway, my granddad died the year before I was born, and 10 years later, my little brother wakes the house up because a man he didn't know woke him up. Dad went to go look for the intruder while Mom asked my little brother questions about what he said and what he looked like. John said the man kept knocking on the door and called him Dave. He said, "Get up, Dave," and wouldn't go away until he would get up even though it was still dark. When he went into the hall, the man had been gone. She then, having heard a very similar story from my dad, asked little John to tell my dad. Dad told us all that for years before he got married, his room was little John's, and when he got up When he got his first job, Granddad would knock on the door over and over again, saying, "Get up, Dave. Get up, Dave," over and over again until he would get out of bed. John was able to point him out in a family photo album, having not seen a photo of him before. And as for Nan, she had been particularly moody and house-proud woman. There have been occasions, such as a time when I talked openly about how messy my sister's room is, and felt her outrage. I heard movement inside the room, peeked through the crack in the door to check Kate wasn't in there. She wasn't, but I already knew that, and sat back down again, only to see a shadow pass inside the now open door. I told myself I imagined it, but it happened 3 or 4 times, going back and forth, and then I swear this energy just came at me, and I had the distinct impression she was still telling me to get out of her house. Ooh, maybe a time slip, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, it's crazy how they build things on top of, like, you know what I mean? Like, cemeteries or places of significance. It's really tragic. I hope you guys can hear me all right. Also, I noticed that when I did my live stream on YouTube last time, the audio wasn't great. So today I have my mic plugged in so people can hear me better. Okay, so this is from former retail lackey. So my grandparents own a house out in the country that they didn't live in. It's an old Cape Cod style house built in the 1920s or 30s. It belonged to my grandfather's aunt, who passed on to him when she had died. Growing up, I had many memories of the house, both fond and spooky. As a kid, even as an adult, I'd sometimes see the ghost of a man in overalls, usually in the morning and usually staring through the bathroom window. When I stayed the night as a kid, I'd sometimes hear footsteps walking up and down the stairs. I'd sometimes get an uneasy feeling at night there, or if I was there by myself, even during the day. It just felt like I was never alone. Fast forward to after I graduated college, I had just turned 20 and got a job not far from my grandparents. We decided I would rent the house from them, and they had someone to watch over the place, and I had a place to stay. It was a win-win. I knew before moving in, I'd likely experience some paranormal activity, as it was a norm, and anytime I stayed the night as a kid. But still, I loved the house and was so excited to move in, to not only bask in the childhood memories of being there, but also create new ones. Because of my paranormal experiences and at other locations during my childhood, I grew as a fascination with all things paranormal, even becoming an amateur ghost hunter in college. The first night of me living there included a blizzard. It was near Christmas and my parents were up visiting. Everyone stayed in town with my grandparents, except for me. I was joined in the house by my parents aging Cocker Spaniel, which was our family dog since I was about 7. I'd moved in all of my stuff by this point and was sleeping in one of the 2 upstairs bedrooms, the same bedroom I'd sleep in as a child. Nothing too out of the ordinary, just some creaks and sounds of an old house settling. Things overall started out fine. I'd occasionally hear a few footsteps going up the stairs every so often, and would sometimes be frightened by the ghost of the man in overalls during my morning bathroom routine. But it wasn't enough to drive me out of the house. As time went on, more paranormal happenings began to occur. I sometimes hear the distinct cackle of my grandma's aunt, who had passed away when I was a toddler. I have sometimes memories of her. She lived there with her sister over the years, and she died in 1993. Her sister stayed in 1991, and the cackles caught me off guard, but I felt at peace knowing the ghost was likely harmless. Soon, more things would begin to occur, and more voices. Not only the cackling, but the sound of another woman weeping. I'd sometimes hear whispers and full-on conversations. One evening, I woke to find a woman with a disturbed face and sunken-in eyes laying next to me, staring at me, smiling, looking like she was holding in laughter. And it truly disturbed me. One day, I decided to bust out of the old tape recorder I used in college during my ghost hunts. Each tape was 90 minutes in length, and I was planning to be out of the house for several hours to visit my grandparents in town. I recorded a quick intro and left. I returned in the early evening hours to find the red record light still on. Puzzled, I hit stop and rewound the tape, and I listened back. I heard myself give an intro, the door to the house closing, and my car turning on. and then a few seconds later passed, and I heard a few clicking sounds. The next thing I heard was me walking up the stairs and picking up the recorder before pressing stop. On another day, I took photographs around the house, and I have a bit of a sensitivity to the paranormal, so when I get a creepy feeling, I snap a picture with my flip phone where I felt it coming from. In the photos, there were mainly orbs, which I never gave much thought to. However, in the bedroom I was staying in upstairs, I captured the photo of a woman by the window. She was wearing a white nightgown, and her hair covered her face. She was facing directly towards me and stood in front of the white curtains. In another photo, what appeared to be the head of a German shepherd was captured hovering over a chair in the corner by a closet. I asked my grandparents if anyone ever owned dogs on property. They said no, and then my stomach sank. The disturbances got so bad in the house that I moved from the upstairs bedroom to the downstairs and kept the doors to the two upstairs bedrooms closed. I rarely entered those rooms after that point. It got so bad that I had to blast a record player as loud as it could to drown out the noises I would hear while doing laundry in the basement. As in any time I would do laundry, I would hear footsteps upstairs as well as voices. That was my laundry routine. Put in some heavy metal music and hit play. Thankfully, there were no neighbors nearby to file a noise complaint. Hi, Abby. Yes, so basically the ghost was either hitting stop, and then they would play it before she would come in the house. I met a man who did this with his TV to stop the voices. That's wild. I mean, I've already told this story a few different times, but yeah, I mean, when I hear people talk about how like they hear voices of spirits, I 1,000% believe them based on my own experiences. So yes. Hello. That's wild. Okay. The story doesn't end there, by the way. They're going on. I thought they ended, but they added a second post. Every so often, I would level with the spirits at the house and tell them that I would be respectful of them if they returned the favor and stopped being so noisy. I did that on 2 or 3 different occasions, and the noises would usually stop or slow down for a while before picking up back up and sometimes getting worse. I would often hear it tapping coming from the outside of the house. Usually during the winter months, they'd often come in threes. Many nights, I'd lay awake in bed and hear weeping from the bedroom directly above me, along with the footsteps and conversations. I began to drink to cope with the experiences. I found I hated it much less and was much less frightened by the ghost when I was drunk. One night, I was awoken by a large thud. It shook the entire house. I looked at my phone, and it was 3 a.m. I decided it wasn't worth it to get out of bed, as that's likely what the spirits wanted. I notified my grandpa of the incident the following morning, telling him maybe an animal fell into the air ducts or something. We searched and found nothing. I typically didn't tell them of all the paranormal happenings, and I didn't want to burden them with that. More time passes, and the activity keeps getting worse. I decide it's now or never to banish whatever is from the house. I had told the spirits a few nights prior that they won't be welcome if they continue to be so noisy. Again, it quieted down for a couple of days before picking back up and getting worse. I refrained from touching booze for about a week and focused on praying. I prayed to God to give me strength and to bless a crucifix I had in my possession. After a week passed, with the activity worse than it's ever been, I decided to perform a makeshift exorcism on the house. I grabbed the crucifix from the wall and my Bible and began to rebuke whatever was in the house. I opened the Bible to Psalm 23 and to begin to read. I read throughout the house, prayed the Our Father in every room, and made the sign of the cross with the crucifix. Basically every cliche exorcism piece you'd ever seen in horror movies, I did. I began in the basement. I went upstairs to the living room and dining room, my downstairs bedroom and the bathroom and the 2 upstairs bedrooms, and the air was thick. As I made my way back downstairs to the kitchen to finish the exorcism, the air was even heavier, and the lights dimmed to a dark brown, even though they were turned on. They didn't shut off, they just dimmed and flickered. My heart was racing as I continued to read scripture and command whatever was in the house to leave. I saw my dead aunt and what I believe was her sister. They were holding each other and they looked awfully scared. Soon after, the man in the overalls appeared behind them, and a fourth figure appeared in the corner behind the man. I commanded them to leave the house and never come back. The two women vanished first, and then reluctantly the farmer, until it was just the fourth figure. It was a tall, dark 3D shadow that appeared to have a cape. The lights were still dim, and I commanded by the power of Jesus Christ and all the angels to leave while holding the crucifix up to it. The wind increased outside. It sounded like I was in the middle of a raging storm. Finally, it vanished and the lights returned to normal. I had never had another paranormal activity at the house after that. I moved several months later to be closer to work, but that experience forever changed me. I love the house, and I still do, though it has fallen to a state of disrepair. I will forever cherish the many memories I have of staying with my dad or uncle out there watching movies or having my cousin over, or taking turns playing GTA until late at night. The house will always hold a special place in my heart, though I have never been the same person as I was before moving into the house. It changed me and scared me forever. Still, I often look back fondly of my time there. Okay, what? Whoa. That story, I mean, it's so good. Do you guys, okay, meter wise? And oh, hi, Alfie. Thank you for joining me on YouTube. Um, I really don't know. I mean, I will say this, as much as I believe in the paranormal and ghost experiences, when there's a lot of activity happening, I do get a little skeptical, but I don't know. Scotty says maybe they were being held by another spirit. I've seen that on some cases. Yeah, maybe. And yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it's so many great details, but dang, that was a lot of activity. So I don't know. Interesting. I mean, I upvoted it. Let's see. Let me see if I can find another one. All right. So Widway 1969 says, I have and I still own it, but rent it out. It started out as my gosh. Never mind. I'm not reading that because I think they're faking this one. Yeah, when you're in it, definitely. That is also a good call. When you are definitely very open, you definitely see a lot of things. I will definitely align with that. Okay. So Curious Resource says my childhood home for certain was haunted. It had its moods for a majority of the time. Everything felt very calm and cozy, but would go through periods when it felt like you were walking on eggshells. It was during these times that it got pretty spooky. You would hear whistling, singing, things falling from shelves without a cause. And as a child, I would see figures often around the house. There was also a room within the house me. My sister and my mom absolutely refused to enter, and that was the back bedroom. Despite it being right above the kitchen and next to the bathroom, it was always deathly quiet. And the feeling of being watched was never far away. You always felt like you were intruding someone's private space if you went into the room. And if you stayed in there for too long, it would make sure to kick you out. What intrigues me is that my dad felt completely fine in there. So my suspicions about it perhaps being something like an infrasound were thrown out. The house has a history anyway. It used to be on a dairy farm adjacent to a graveyard, but when rebuilding took place, the graves were moved to the nearby Baptist church where the tombstones line the walls. It's not uncommon to find lots of cowbone or pottery around the garden. A lady also sadly died of cancer in the house, and the apple tree she planted still grows there. All these things add up, I guess, and change the moods of any house. Okay. One says, my best friend's uncle passed in their house and we oh no, oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, the stories where like someone passes and you like an individual that was close to that person, either see them or feel it. Those are really touching stories because it just shows like how strong the bond is. My husband had a very similar story. Well, not like that directly, but I know he had a story about his grandmother and during the time that she passed away. Okay. This thread is really good, but there's, like, so many of these stories. As you can see, if you're on the YouTube side, you can definitely see that there's, like, a lot of comments. Okay. So I think we hit the end of this thread. I'm gonna go back to another story, so just bear with me, you guys. But also I wanna make a quick announcement. So I made a TikTok video about the Hollywood or the Escape Hotel Hollywood. I don't know if anyone here has ever been in LA or near that area, but I had gone to this event that Hot Topic hosted. It was like their scare fair, and they were announcing new releases and stuff, but the building itself is very beautiful. Um, and as soon as I walked in, I'm like, "Yep, there's stuff here." I'm like, "This place, I feel like it's haunted. I'm sensing things." Um, and for me though, like when I'm in public spaces, I don't try to tap into a lot of things because I don't wanna open up myself to like not only the space, but people that's happened before, and I it's not a fun time. Um, so usually I try to keep, like, myself closed and, like, my boundaries and stuff. But yeah, I walked in, I'm like, "I'm sensing things," and then I did a video on it, and this historian and author, he writes a lot of really good books about, like, if you wanna know anything about, like, the history, hauntings, like, and he's rolling out with the one in Hollywood by yeah, like, the 1st week of October. But the one that I got from him was Universal Studios, and I think Los Angeles he has a couple of different ones, but the Universal Studios one, it was really interesting, and I posted it on my social media, and he commented, and he was like, "I'm having a whole chapter on that." So it was just really nice to have, like, confirmation. Thank you, Scott. Yes, thank you. I know, I feel oh my god, I had a Reiki cleansing done, and it always this my eye, like, my crown, and then, like, my eye, and then my heart one is always needs to be regulated. That one, oh, forget that one. Like, it's so I know that's it's never like, "Hey, it's good." It's always like, "Oh, your heart chakra, it's too wide." I'm like, "Thank you. I know. I need help." So yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, it's you're pretty spot on with that. It's wild. But yeah, so I try to keep my boundaries in check with that because oh my god, I've had again moments. I remember this one time. So okay, when I was first dabbling into it and like opening myself up and like doing the psychic development stuff and learning how to like really do all this stuff, um, I meditated today and saw all my colors. It was interesting. Oh my god, that's awesome. Yeah, too much empathy. Oh my god, it's an ongoing thing. So, yeah, I remember so when I was first opening up myself, uh, I was learning a lot about consent and boundaries, and I know, like, there's people within this community that, like, they're like, "No, if you have it, you have it. You shouldn't be doing boundaries." But for me, like, I've seen the repercussion on that. So again, when I was first opening up myself to things, there was this girl who had just started dating this guy. And because I was so excited, I was like really being able to like tap into it. I told this girl, I said, "Yeah, you should be careful on your trip to Vegas." But it was more of like a scary message. And I should have just, now I know what I know now, right? I mean, I was still like learning, right? So I said to her, "Before you go to Vegas," because her and her boyfriend were going to go to like this concert in Vegas. And I said to her, "You need to like be really careful with your trip out there." And I told her something about her drink. And I think like that really scared her so much. And no, you're good. Boundaries are so necessary, but I see people online talk about how it's not necessary. I'm like, no, it is. Like, trust me, it is. And I think that's also like a misconception too, that like if you are a medium or if you're a psychic, you should be able to give messages, right? No, we are people first. We're in this plane first. We need to be balanced. We can't be always in that spiritual realm. Like too much of that is not good for us. You need to be 1 foot here, 1 foot there, and you need to, yeah, there's all this stuff with it. But anyway, so I gave her this message, and oh gosh, so she went, but the whole time she was like scared, and I think it just like, this happened 10 years ago, so I think she said that in a way she was already like in such paranoia and anxiety that like she just wasn't having fun. And yes, she found out something about her boyfriend, who he wasn't trustworthy, but in general, like I think the situation got worse because of how I just said it to her.
without even like asking her for consent or if she was ready to hear it or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, because we walk in this path of like, we have to learn our karmic lessons, our life lessons that we sign up for. And the way I said it to her, I just can tell she was not ready for it. She was so paranoid and just like living in fear. And it's just not a good thing. That was one. The other time I saw something that was just not okay was when I recently went to an event and this person was doing like crowd readings. And like there was this girl there and the poor girl was like, no, no, no. And like I felt it, like she's not ready for this message. And that's why she was getting so upset. Another situation I had is when someone walked up to this individual and they're like, your grandmother just died. And she just started bawling her eyes out in public. And I don't think she was ready for that either. Like they're literally at a public place and she's like crying. It's just, I don't think she was ready for that too. Cause like she like booked it out of there. She wasn't okay with that. And again, it's just, there's like a lot of things again that go into it, but I'm summarizing it so I don't give a lot of details away or anything like that. Cause it happened forever ago and plus it's private, but yeah. So anyway, like that's kind of why I always tell people like, no, I sometimes don't. And I shut it off. Like especially if like, because I have so much empathy, I need to shut it off. I can't, it's not the best. When I did the Halloween special last year for the CW, there's so many times I kept like listening to like my favorite like K-pop band at the time to like help with my vibrations and shake off things that did not belong to me. Yeah, exactly. Like you're not meant to like, we're humans first. Like we're not meant to walk around like your grandmother just died. Like you're not meant to, that's not like, I know the intention is, some people's intentions are in the right place, but the boundary isn't. I don't know. That's just yeah, it's again, I've seen a lot of disasters, but those are a couple that I can remember right now off the top of my head. But I also think it builds a misconception too, like people who don't understand this community, it builds a misconception that like we need to know everything, like when you're gonna win the lotto. It's like that's just not how it works. That's not, no. And again, it just is a lot of things with it. So fun stuff. Oh my god, thank you, Spirit Sponge. That's so sweet of you. Exactly, the delivery shouldn't be abrupt. There's so many ways to go about it. Like I'll give you an example. I sat in a circle recently, an online circle. Like a mutual of mine was hosting it, and this guy had like he was trying to tap into his abilities, and he like said to me, "Can I come to you?" I'm like, "Sure." And yes, he did ask for consent, but the delivery, okay, so this is now the delivery message. So he's like, I just hear cars screeching. You're gonna get this horrible car accident. I'm like, okay, that's but because I've been doing this for like a decade. I've been part of circles. I've been seeing people and like how they try to like adapt their language and their messages. I was like, okay, like I'm not gonna get this scared. I'm not gonna like feed into it. I'm gonna obviously take their message and thank them for it. But the delivery wasn't there. And I think that the better way would have been, hey, like, you're going to go on this trip. I think that, like, when you go on this trip, prepare to, like, make sure that you check your tires, check your oil, get your car serviced so that you have a good transition on your trip, right? Like, I think that would have been a little bit better than, like, I hear screeching tires. You're going to get this horror, because, like, at that point, that can manifest other things that are, like, fear-based for that individual. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, so anyway, like it would have been better for them to be like, okay, you know, check your tires, make sure that you stop when you feel rested. Those are like more and like powerful ways to like make that person feel like, okay, you're right. Check the car, check everything so nothing bad happens. You get the message, but you also feel empowered to like take control, secure yourself, and like though that's more of a nicer way. Exactly. Like you don't put fear where you don't need to put the fear. So those are the things in that nature. Exactly. So, I mean, again, like I was like, they gave me the message and like, not gonna lie, because as a human first, like it does, I'm like, oh, that's kind of scary. But I reminded myself like, no, they're probably like trying to like tell me to be careful. My guys are telling me careful. And I did go to San Francisco. We did almost get into a car accident. So the message was spot on, but I think me and my husband did everything we could to prepare ourselves for that. We were fine. So, yeah. Kudos to them, but the message was for sure could have been like rewarded better. But I didn't feed into the fear of that either. You know what I mean? Like before going on this trip, I checked everything. I was like, okay, I'm gonna check everything, make sure everything's good, and yeah, here we are. We're good. We're fine. Everything's fine. But yeah, I mean, scary situations like that. Um, I've had people tell my mom like, oh, this was another bad reading too. My mom and I recently had gone to like a botanica, and like a little bit like, if people don't know what this is, like a botanica is like a, in Latino or Latina culture, like kind of like an occult shop, a witch shop basically. And we had gone to one, and this lady, and this is another thing too, like if you want to be careful, like the red flags, right? So she's like talking to my mom, and she's like, can I see your hand? So she's like trying to read her palm, right? And she's like looking at her palm. She's like, you're going to die soon. You don't have a lot of life to live. But if you come back, I will give you all the answers to protect yourself. And I'll give you a whole session. And I was like, oh, I was so mad. I was like, oh. And I said to her, ma'am, and I'm speaking to her in Spanish. But I'm like, ma'am, like, just so you know, like, I consider myself intuitive. I host psychic development circles here in LA. This is messed up. What you're doing is wrong. Not okay. Fun stuff. I was so upset. My poor mom, she was like, the whole day was just ruined for her. And like, keep in mind, my mom, so she's on disability for life, so cognitively she's a little bit like behind on things, just because like she had literally a piece of her brain removed. So like her whole day she's like, well, she said that, and she was like so stuck on it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I was not even expecting for this lady to just like grab her hand and be like, you're gonna die soon and you need to come back. I'm like, what the heck? So yeah, not okay. So anyway, if anyone ever gives you fear-based readings, just keep that is a big red flag. You should never be receiving fear-based readings like that. You should never be told you're gonna die. You should never be careful of those people, because half the time they want you to hold on to that fear, so you can go to them, and like they are going to literally take money from you and like continue to use that fear to manipulate you. Again, that's what this one was trying to do. I see it all the time where like, if you have a curse, I'm going to charge you $500. I have these special candles for you. That happened I was at a bar years ago in Denver, and this bar had like a special event. They had like a palm reader, no, not a palm reader, a tarot card reader there, and another person that was with her. And that's exactly what happened. Oh, thank you, Jay. So sweet of you. But I saw somebody like, you have a curse. I'm gonna charge you $500. And I'm like, okay. Okay. All right. But anyway, so I think there is a way to do it, of course, but anyway, I kind of went on a whole tangent on that. I didn't mean to go on a tangent, you guys. Okay, so let's get on to another story. I know we went on a whole thing with this, but I just wanted to go on. There's definitely proper ways to go on about it. Okay. Let me keep scrolling. There's a lot of pictures on the thread. I'm sure if you're on the YouTube side, you can see that. Yeah, no, yeah, exactly, Alvy. No to fear-based readings. No, thank you. Again, just so many things that like continue. Let's see. Am I in the right thread? Because I feel like I'm getting so many of these images. Back to the ghost. Okay, there we go. Ghost thread. And okay, here we go. We have a story, guys. Okay. Hi. Deceased grandpa came to visit. Is this something that happens to people? So my grandfather passed away a couple of days ago. We held his funeral yesterday and we stayed up late last night. It's currently 1 in the morning. Due to my great aunt staying by us for a while to attend the funeral, we stayed up talking and reminiscing about him. And then we decided that we were going to go to bed. My aunt had a flight early in the morning, so he didn't want to be drowsy the next day. Everyone headed to bed, and while I stayed on my phone watching TikTok per usual, I got to go to the bathroom. Not looking at the hallway behind me, on the way back from the bathroom, I'm looking down, rubbing my nose, and doing whatever. When I look up, I see a shadow figure. The dim light of the living room made his shoulders and curly hair clear. I didn't see his face clearly, only a silhouette, and the light shining through his hair. When I look up, I had already made it to the bathroom, or to the bedroom. I stared for a while, and he didn't move at all, until I heard him take a breath. I rushed into my bedroom and I shut the door and ran to close my curtains. I tried to call my mom, but she didn't answer. Now here I sit typing this. Interesting. I kind of wish like they would have described their grandfather more to get a better understanding, but I do know that in some circumstances, because I think people think that all shadow people are like bad and evil, but in some circumstances, when you see a shadow figure, it might be the individual who's seen the shadow figure, like because maybe they just haven't tapped into their ability, or like their third eye or anything like that. They can't really see the figure, if that makes sense. So yeah, there's that portion of it. Or it could be also that the figure is trying to come through, but maybe they're like, some people also believe like they're trying to come through, but they fully can't. I mean, there's different theories on it, of course, but yeah. Yes. They're very interesting. Yeah, awesome. I don't know. It could be a number of things. It would have made more sense if they described it, but I think that if they're seeing like the curly hair and everything, that might be like an indicator of their grandfather. I saw my best friend's mom a week before my wedding. Oh. Wait, I'm sorry. Exactly. They don't have enough energy to pull through. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, there's like different yeah, there's like that, or people like they can't see. Yeah, I definitely, yeah, I see what you're saying. Let's go back. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Okay, this might be okay. So this person says, is this a paranormal experience or a message? So a couple of days ago, I was watching TikTok in my parents' second floor living room while the rest of my family was downstairs watching a movie. So beside the TV upstairs, we have a small lamp with a bunch of healing crystals around it, as my parents are kind of spiritual and believe in that kind of stuff. The crystals all have somewhat of a flat side to them, and are sitting around the crystal lamp without being glued down to the surface of the lamp. I have been sitting there for about an hour just watching TikTok on my phone when I suddenly heard the sound of one of the crystals falling to the floor. Now, this startled me, and I got up to see what happened. The crystal, a red jasper, who fell off the lamp, was a stone furthest away from the edge of the TV bench. It was actually closest to the wall, so it must have jumped over the lamp and over the other crystals before landing on the floor. Now, this freaked me out as I don't understand how this could have happened. But I put the stone back on the lamp in the same position it previously was, on the flattest side down, and went downstairs to tell the rest of my family about it. When I had explained what happened, it sounded like they didn't believe me. I stayed down there with them as I was too creeped out to go back upstairs. Maybe 5 minutes later, we all heard a thud from upstairs. We all went quiet and paused the movie to listen, and I instantly knew what it was. My dad and I went upstairs to check it out, and lo and behold, the same red jasper crystal was laying on the floor. Now we all are freaked out and don't understand how this could have happened. My mom is the calmest one in her family and suggested I Google what the red jasper crystal stands for, as it might be a sign from the universe. I mean, I don't know what to believe at this point, and I'm wondering if anyone else had experienced something very familiar. English is not my first language, so I'm so sorry for the spelling mistakes. I think they did great explaining it. Um, yes, I find that super. That was gonna say too. My initial thought is like it's really neat when people talk about things moving, um, especially when they're not like trying to like over dramatize it. Like I think they do a really good job at explaining it. The other thing though, can I just throw this out there? I think it's funny that they're like this person's like, oh my parents are spiritual and they collect crystals, but they themselves don't believe her when she's talking about like her experience. That's like the irony here. Um, and now I personally think here's what I think. Sounds yeah, I think it's someone trying to get their attention. That's just my take. Um, yeah, they're just sometimes pretty. I think it's someone trying to get their attention. Um, initially, what I was thinking is that they've might have known someone or someone in the house or whatever. Like they feel like connected to the rock or they love the rock. Um, it also makes me think of this story I had a while ago when so I talk about my mentor quite often on some of my lives, and she passed away due to cancer 2 years ago. She was this phenomenal person. She's literally like why I'm here today, why I opened up myself. And she gave my mom met her. My mom really wanted to meet her, so she did. And both my mom and her and her partner, because they're both amazing, um, they were picking up that my grandfather has a thing for the purple amethyst. Can't even say it right now. But it's like a purple rock, and like my mom was getting emotional before they even confirmed that. One of them goes to her room and she hands my mom the crystal. She goes, "I'm giving this to you. This, your dad wants you to have it." And I was so blown away because my grandfather, when I was a kid, that's actually, if there's one thing I remember about my grandfather, before the fad of crystals now, what they are today, I feel like my grandpa was the OG. Like, I think in my world, right, he was the OG of crystal collecting. I remember as a kid, this is like back in the early 90s, he had a whole shelf of like purple amethyst. Loved it. Okay. So when she walked into her room and she's like, "Your dad wants," that was what I knew. I knew that was my grandfather. Yeah, he was. I loved my grandfather. He he was great. He was a crazy, amazing storyteller. He told me all kinds of amazing stories. But yeah, he collected crystals, and I remember as a kid, like he would tell me about them. And I mean, I don't remember what he was saying back then about it because I was like literally like 4 or 5. But I remember like that being like something I found very quirky about him as a kid, because I'm like, as a little kid, my little kid brain is like, why is he collecting rocks, like these pretty rocks, and I'm not allowed to bring rocks in the house, but he had this beautiful, like it was pretty big, but she was amazing. Thank you. Yeah, she was literally like the best of the best. And yeah, my mom got emotional. She's like, "Yep, that's my dad." I'm like, yeah, that was grandpa coming through. So I think about that. I don't think about it directly in that retrospect, but the fact that like the red jasper crystal kept falling off the lamp, I think it's like a message from somebody there, not necessarily like the crystal giving a message. You know what I mean? I think it's actually like some energy there. Might be an ancestor, might be a spirit. I don't know, but yeah, that's the only thing I can think of with that story. All right, guys. All right, so it's getting pretty late. Yes, grounding protection. Oh my god, thank you. Okay, guys, I'm ready to. I'm gonna have to call it a night. It's getting pretty late, but you guys were fun. Thank you so much. I do respond, yeah. So I've had people write to me before, or people message me on Instagram, and I try to get to some of them on Instagram. I've been noticing that like some of them get filtered, and then months later I see the message and I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry, you guys," and then I do respond. But I've made stories on some of the story submissions on my email, so feel free to email me if you ever have questions or anything. My socials are in my bio, and it's also the same as this Stephanie_Strange. So you can like the way Stephanie STEFFANY_. strange. So you can find me on there. Either way. But thank you guys so much. You guys are amazing. Have a good night. Have a good night, guys. Bye. Okay, I'm gonna end it now here. If I can find the mouse. Okay. Bye.